Get up, you lazy Mundani, I groaned as I turned over in the cot. I blinked as the lights inside the room flicked on, casting a low orange glow into the single chamber. Do you ever sleep? The trinity of Evolus sustains me. It's too early for your quotes, Eladra. She's gotta sleep with one eye open or something, I thought to myself. I'm supposed to have leisure time, but I'm stuck with you, so you're coming to the drink house with me, was her response. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and threw on a shirt. I was fairly certain it was clean. After my recovery from the white blood cell blocker and the subsequent fever, the head nurse had ruled that further treatments would be extremely dangerous. The captain had agreed to suspend any more doses for the time being. They'd given me residence in one of the floors below Gate Square. A natural cave had been formed out of an underground lake, which the Elvar used as a means to generate electricity. A large waterfall trickled over the far side of the cavern. A sort of dam had been built, causing the waterfall. When I asked Eladra, she said that part of the Elhaven's power was hydroelectrically generated. As we walked out of my living quarters, I glanced around at the small huts that had been carved out of the rock walls surrounding the lake. Elvar children ran around, stick fighting or playing with small figures in the dirt, while other residents used the lake water to bathe, cook with, and clean. Why do people live in such small homes? Could they tunnel back and make the spaces larger? They could, I suppose, but unless you need it, I don't see how that would help the gate. To look good, impress your friends? How would a larger living space do that? If I want to look good, I would put on a traditional Elvar garb. If I wanted to impress, I would duel a fellow guard and beat him quickly. Everyone here has been assigned to some form of duty at the gate. It's a mandatory 5-year service that every Elvar must perform. Most of the royal houses are exempt, of course, but sometimes, if the son or daughter of a royal house disgraces the family particularly bad, they may be sent away here to perform a stint with the gate guards. I nodded and stretched my arms as we walked down a path that led around the edge of the lake. It meandered up into a narrow walkway between the lake and the cavern wall. We followed it to a large opening that had been carved out of the gray stone wall. A set of stone stairs spiraled up into the ceiling and down into the floor. The last week had consisted of a few tests administered by the nurses in the second medical ward. Sometimes the odd blood or urine sample was required, but generally it had been a lot of waiting around. I'd followed all the orders without resisting or complaining. It seemed that the captain had appreciated my efforts and given us a day off. I was excited to experience something other than needles or running on a treadmill, but ultimately I missed the surface and the sun. Alrighty, where to? I asked. Down. We gotta go to level 5. My brother owns a bar down there. What level is Gate Square on? 1. We are on level 3, which is mostly homes for the workers that service the gate in some way. Level 2 is where most of the guards are stationed. That's where the barracks and training center are located. Level 4 is the medical ward, and 5 is mostly just service tunnels leading to farther down places. We think the Boggles live farther down, but it's hard to tell. They always seem to appear on level 1 to attack the gate. I nodded and continued following Eladra. Is there any chance that we can go back to the surface? I really miss fresh air and the sun. She looked at me quizzically. You miss the sun? Well, yeah, don't you, Eladra? Don't you miss fresh air? The wind blowing across your skin? The fresh coolness of an early morning? No, but back on my homeworld, we live much the same as we do here. The sun is scorching hot, and living above ground can be dangerous. I see. Sighing, I continued following Eladra down the stone steps. Portable work lamps had been fastened into the underside of the stair. Some of the light bulbs had broken and been replaced with dull orange bulbs. A mishmash of stark white and orange light filled the staircase as we descended a few levels. We walked for several minutes in silence, only the sounds of our scuffing feet echoing down the stairs. Something above me broke the silence, and I thought I heard the patter of feet following us down the stairs. I think I hear someone following us. Probably just another Elvar going to the level below, replied Eladra. I had an odd feeling. I wasn't sure why, but I felt uneasy. I quickened my pace slightly and stayed close to Eladra. What are the lower levels like? Rough, was her only response. Well, that didn't make me feel any better. We came to a landing with a big letter 5 painted above the door leading out to the stairs shaft. These tunnels were well lit but dirty. Rags and piles of clothes lay around, dust coated the walls and junk was scattered everywhere. I saw a few huddled shapes dressed in a rag laying against the walls. Why did your brother open a bar down here? Level 1 would have been much better for getting customers. His bar isn't for travelers, it's for locals. Besides that, down here is not governed as tightly as the upper floors, which means less taxes and certain freedom to move cargo. What does that mean? I wondered. We followed the tunnel for a few minutes until it opened up into a very large cavern. The first thing I noticed was the large double-storied building in the middle of the space. It was made out of wood instead of carved into the surrounding stone walls. I could see large power conduits coming out of the back and snaking up the chamber's sides. I followed them with my eyes to a 12 by 12 gutter high on the wall that had a single massive 4-inch conduit piercing the ceiling. A lightning bolt had been painted on the cover of the box. Whoa, this is different. Must have been expensive bringing all that wood down here. No, but it did take him years to drag it all down, then build the structure. All by himself? I was impressed. The building looked like a Lincoln log cabin, sturdy and able to last the test of time. He had my brothers to help, but they're also in the guards, so they didn't have much time. What does your father do here in Elhaven? He's already served his 5 years. He didn't want to leave us down here alone, so he stayed and decided to create something with his spare time. He calls himself the unofficial Elhaven Procurement Officer. That sounds illegal to me, I said, glancing at her. Only if you get caught, was her instant response. A response I sensed she'd learnt from somewhere else. Elhaven pushed open the door, and warm light spilled out to greet us. The room inside was large enough to accommodate 12 tables, plus the large bar top on the far side of the room. It looked to be modeled after a rustic cabin. A couple Elvar sat scattered around the room in 2s and 3s. A few fawns and even a centaur sat at one of the tables. They sipped drinks while talking and laughing, generally just having a good time. I felt instantly at home and grinned to myself. Boy, I can't wait for a drink. Elhaven strode to the bar top, lithely moving around the tables like a dancer doing her practice steps. What do I have to do to get a drink around here? Elhaven called to a massively muscled Elvar male. He had long dark hair that was fashioned into a top knot. His back was bare. I saw shining silver tattoos covering the entirety of his frame. He was crouched over, cleaning up a spill on the floor. He straightened when he heard Elhaven's voice. Welcome home, Elhaven. He came around the side of the bar and touched his forehead to hers. They sat like that for a long second before breaking contact. May the stars of Evelus shine on your head, patriarch. May the Trinity of Evelus grace you with strength and perception, daughter. I watched curiously. This seemed like a familiar greeting between them, but I'd never seen anyone else perform it in the whole time I'd been there. I felt that people acted differently around me. Voices would die as I'd enter a room, or they would fade into whispers, glancing at me suspiciously. Elhaven's father leaned in as if to whisper conspiratorially, but his voice didn't change in volume whatsoever. Following in your father's footsteps, I see. Is that why you've been away for so long? He nudged her and winked. She scowled and pushed him away. Evelus, no, I've been on special assignment for the guards. Besides that, I have a reputation to uphold. People will start saying that the Hentor lineage is infatuated with the Mundani. The large Elvar turned and began walking back behind the bar. They don't understand what it's like to love, because they will never allow themselves to feel the way I did about your mother. Elvar breeding rituals are inflexible and archaic, but it has kept our people's bloodline strong. There will be a time, Elhaven, when you must make the same choice I did, but only you know what's right for you. I know, you've told me hundreds of times. Elhaven scowled and took a seat on one of the bar stools. I followed suit. Who's this Mundani? Asked Elhaven's father. Forgive me, this is Jeremiah Hampton. Hampton, this is my father, Jard Hentor. He used to captain the famous Berserker 5th. I nodded to the imposing Elvar, not sure how to greet him. He nodded back and grabbed 2 mugs from a tray. What'll it be, Elhaven? Elhaven ordered a greenish clear liquid that steamed as it was poured. She sipped it and shivered as the drink ran down her throat. Do you have any beer? Maybe a hazy IPA? I asked Jard. We got beer, but no hazy. I have to make everything in the house, cause the uppers don't like us importing goods. Too conspicuous. I ended up ordering a beer made out of lichen that grew in the tunnels. It was bad. Imagine a beer that tasted like a liquid salad. If you do, you'll be on the right track for how this tasted. The drink was alcoholic enough, so I drank it anyway, besides the fact I didn't want to offend the huge Elvar. Eladra's father guffawed when I first took a sip. My face disobeyed my will and grimaced. Yeah, don't sip. I'd recommend drinking it fast. It's a bit rough if you're not used to lichen beer. He laughed again and set about cleaning some mugs. I glanced at Eladra from the corner of my eye. She seemed to be more relaxed in this place than she had been the whole time I'd known her. Something about this bar and her father seemed to put her at ease. A few more people came in and sat down at the bar to my right. I didn't bother looking up. I preferred to study the back of the bar, Eladra's father, and the many spigots of drinks that hosted odd names. After a few minutes, however, something about the stranger next to me began nagging my subconscious. I tried to study the platinum blonde hair and golden eyes. The way his mouth turned up in a sharp, cat-like toothy smile. I'd seen that smile somewhere before, but where? Then I spotted the rings on his fingers. What are you doing here, Lazuli? You know that the guards are looking for you, hissed Eladra's father in low tones. I cut him off mid-sentence. You ruined my life! I yelled and threw myself at Lazuli. I swung a fist, but before my fist connected with Lazuli's face, something hard hit me in the side of the cheek. An Elvar had stepped in and punched me before I could reach the focus of my wrath. I stumbled backward from the blow. Eladra jumped off the bar stool, catching me. She reached for her sidearm, but Lazuli was faster. He'd already drawn a loaded gun, aiming it between her eyes. Drop it, was Lazuli's only other command. Eladra hesitated for a moment. Lazuli motioned with his head, and a ranger that had been sitting next to Eladra placed a knife at her throat. Let's put the guns away, shall we? I'm only here to talk. I agree. Everyone should put their guns away, said Eladra's father. He had pulled a sawed-off shotgun from behind the counter and aimed it at Lazuli. Lazuli just smiled and put his gun back into the folds of his cloak. The ranger gently pulled the gun from Eladra's hand and stashed it in his cloak, then sat down next to her. She was panting hard, teeth gritted, lip curled up in a snarl, eyes full of rage. I tried to control my anger, but it roiled inside of my chest. The person directly responsible for all the misfortune that had happened to me sat 3 feet to my right, and there was nothing I could do. I realized just how powerless I was in this world, and I absolutely hated it, but that didn't stop me from imagining all the things I could do to make him pay. Good choice. Now, as I was saying, I'm here for a vial of Hampton's blood, said Lazuli. His voice was different, no longer ancient sounding. Rather, it was strong and smooth. Fuck you, I spat. Now, tutted Lazuli. Is that any way to speak to the Elvar who enlightened you? If I could kill you, I'd do it right here and now. Okay, was Lazuli's coy reply. He pulled out his pistol and set it on the table in front of me. I froze, staring at the gun. Then I gritted my teeth, feeling the anger course through me. I picked up the handgun and placed it against Lazuli's forehead. I shook and clenched my teeth so hard they began to ache. I was dimly aware that silence had fallen over the bar. Don't, whispered Eladra. My thumb pulled back the hammer, my index finger tightening on the trigger ever so slightly. I had to do this. I needed to do this. Please, whispered Eladra. I trembled and screamed, punching Lazuli in the face with my other hand. Instead of being angry, Lazuli just laughed. I could see a hint of insanity behind his eyes as he reached forward and took the gun from me. With that simple action, I slumped back into my seat, the anger leaking out of me. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't kill another sentient being in cold blood. How do you reverse the aging? I asked in a low voice. Glamour. This is my real age. That was just a facade so I could travel around the topside. No one looks twice at a creepy drunkard. You didn't think I actually looked like a Mundani, did you? Can you blame me? I replied. I've never actually seen the Dreadalis. He shrugged and turned to Jard. Mind if I get a drink, Captain? Want the usual? Asked Jard. Yeah. Jard shoved the shotgun back behind the counter and poured a thick red liquid into a mug and handed it to him. I shivered as I realized it was blood. You just keep blood on tap? I asked. Well, I'd like to be able to serve anyone that may chance across my bar, and Threadalis, although a small part of the Elvar population, still appear around here from time to time. Jard wiped his hands on a towel and threw the bloody thing into a bin behind the counter. Lazuli reached into a pocket in his cloak and produced a shining vial, and emptied it into the mug of blood. He downed it in one swift pull, sighing in delight. Still taking that stuff? Bultrin may harden the skin, but it also takes a toll on your mind. You realize it can cause psychosis in certain users, said Jard. I'm aware, Captain, but my mind is as strong as ever, and it saved my life more times than I can count. Call me Jard Lazuli. I'm no longer your captain. A shimmering field began to dance over Lazuli's eyes, causing them to glow. How can you show your face here? You're hunted by the whole of the gate guards. You're a declared terrorist among the Mundani. Eladra gesticulated wildly in the air, her anger apparent. There's a good reason for that. Have you been back to Ivalis in the last 3 years? It's getting worse. The Felchers have always been a nuisance, but we've been able to withstand their constant raids due to their infighting and constant power struggles between the clans. But recently, they've managed to unite under a single banner. Burrow 012 is gone, completely destroyed. The Felchers used Elvar souls to summon their primeval deity. Eladra gasped. Destroyed? But that was our second largest burrow, 2 million strong. Jard leaned forward as well, eyes piercing into Lazuli with a fierce gaze. Is this why we haven't had a change with gate guards in over 2 years? Yep, was all Lazuli could reply with. I don't understand, I turned to Eladra. What are the Felchers, and what is a primeval? Jard replied instead. Eladra was still stunned into silence. We are mortal enemies. If Elvar are akin to felines, Felchers are akin to avians. They live on the surface, and we live underground. It's a crude comparison, but the closest I can describe it to someone that's never seen them. A primeval is their deity. It's a dark entity that feeds on fear, bloodshed, and destruction. It's raised through a dark sorcery requiring the bloodshed of a multitude, of either friends or foes. Haven't you tried negotiating a peace treaty with them? I asked. They all looked at me like I was stupid. I cringed under their collective stare. We've tried brokering peace, but they break it every time. They enjoy war and violence too much. Felchers aren't content with sharing the worlds of Ivalis. They will only rest when we are dead or gone. So we've stopped trying, and now just focus on repelling their attacks. Jard broke off with a scowl. Lazuli spoke up again. I've come to disagree with the High Royal Caster's style of leadership. Before the primeval was summoned, he was content to allow those evil creatures free reign. He misused the royal funds for his parties and social gatherings. Without funds to pay the troops, a lot of them went home, leaving the defense stretched and weak in certain points. Millions of people have died under his leadership, and he doesn't even have the grace to step down. He's more concerned with maintaining his royal position. Ever since the destruction of Burrow 021, he's finally realized the threat to our existence is bigger than he previously thought. Lazuli spoke with conviction, and I almost felt like following him. Almost. Even back when we led soldiers together, Castor was a coward. He'd never stand with his men. He delegated orders from a tent, claiming that as royalty, he shouldn't have to get his hands dirty. Jard spat into a sink behind him. Lazuli spoke up again. I'm going to take leadership from Castor and fix the mess he's created. But in order to do that, I need an army. Jaressa came up with the plan to attempt a gene change on this world. There is a veritable untapped resource of soldiers here. What makes you think people will fight for you? Their appearance may be altered, but they'll still be businessmen, mothers, and children, I told him. In order to beat the enemy, one must know the enemy. In the years I fought the Felchers, I've learned certain blood rituals. I can slave people infected by my bite to my will. They will love me like no other. They will live and die for my every word. I don't desire just soldiers in this war for survival. I require fanatics. I stared at Lazuli in horror. You really are a monster. Can't let you do this. You can't really stop me, was his simple reply. I already have Jaressa working on a much stronger version of your sickness, one that's undiluted by your body. However, her research will progress much faster if I get a sample of your blood. The mutations happening inside your body are rather rare after all. I glared at Lazuli and flexed my fingers. I ached to rip his face to shreds with my new claws. Suddenly, a third man burst into the bar. Lazuli, we gotta go. Someone tipped off the gate guards. Kill team is on their way down here. ETA 5 minutes. Lazuli got to his feet, patted me on the cheek. Since you were the first, I won't slave you. I'll leave you as an homage to my genius. He pulled a needle out of his pack and stuck me in the arm. I was about to struggle, but he was already done, having siphoned just enough of my life juice. I growled deep in my throat. Lazuli strode out of the bar with a casual wave of his hand. I walked to a window as they walked out. I'll take point. Rest of you hang back. The kill team won't hesitate to kill every one of us. Lazuli commanded as they sprinted forward. The bar was silent for a few moments, then the sounds of clinking glasses slowly started up again, followed by the buzz of voices. A few minutes after Lazuli had left, the sounds of running feet could be heard outside the bar. Search the perimeter. It is essential that we bring in Lazuli. The captain's voice rang out. Tall Elvar kicked in the door and searched the room with his rifle. He walked in and crouched near the door, scanning the premises. 3 more Elvar stalked in, and when they reported the room was clear, the captain walked in. Sorry for intruding on your day off, Aladra. Captain, did you know that Burrow 012 was decimated? She burst out as soon as he stepped close. How did you hear about that? Lazuli, was her reply. Jard still stood behind the bar, nonchalantly watching the exchange. How about a drink, Firin? Not right now, Jard. Thank you. I wouldn't mind a drink. Maybe something a bit stronger than the lichen beer? I glanced at Eladra's empty glass. Jard grinned and poured me the same drink Eladra had been sipping on just a few minutes earlier. The greenish clear liquid steamed as it sat in the small mug. Is it hot? Jard shook his head. I sniffed it and it faintly smelt of smoke and moldy apples. I shrugged and brought the drink to my lips. My intention was to swallow the drink like a shot and slam the mug back down on the table. In reality, I downed a quarter of the drink before I began hacking and coughing. The drink was stronger than anything I'd ever tasted. It was several minutes before I fully recovered. I'd advise you to sip that one, Hampton, Jard laughed. The captain was in close conference with Eladra. I caught the tail end of the conversation as I walked up. It's settled then. We will begin tomorrow. Are you sure that's wise? Asked Eladra. What's going on? I asked. It's clear you are useless in a fight, and when I say useless, a mouse would be more deadly than you. The reason I bring this up is because the High Noble Caster has heard about you back on Evalis. He is interested in the changes you've undergone. A royal delegation will be arriving in a few months. It will reflect badly on me if you aren't schooled in the Elvar customs. Starting tomorrow, you will be joining Avalra for training. Who better to teach you than the Elhaven elite?